Hi everyone, and welcome again to my audiovisual channel. My name is Gabriela Handal, and I'm a draftsman and the host of the show, A Conversation About Art. During each episode, I look for the meaning of art and beauty through conversations with colleagues in different artistic fields. Today, I offer you episode 59, and I will talk with artist Milan Franklin. If you'd like to support this podcast, you can do so by liking and sharing this video, and also subscribing to my audiovisual channel. These are all immediate and at no additional cost to you. If you'd like to show your support with money, it's also very welcome and appreciated. You can do so by purchasing my drawings directly from my website, which is gabrielahandal.com, just one word. You can purchase crafts I make from eBay, buy prints of my drawings, or leaving me a tip. Thank you for your time and attention in watching this episode, and do leave a comment so I know you watched this episode. I hope you enjoy it. Thank you for your time. Okay, Milan Franklin, thank you very much for being on A Conversation About Art. You are episode 59. Please tell our listeners and viewers who you are and what you do.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. My name is Milan Franklin. So I'm retired actually. I'm a double amputee from United States Marine Corps, and always loved art. And so since then I decided I wanted to start studying art, and here I am now. So.
Okay. Well, thank you for your service.
Oh, thank you.
So why didn't you do art before, I guess, when you were thinking about what to study, or, I mean, did you do it when you were younger before enlisting, or?
Oh yeah. I actually, most of my time as a kid I spent just drawing. I was never really actually into painting. I never really attempted to try that, just really wasn't interested in it. But I kind of dabbled with clay but mostly I drew as much as possible. And I don't know why, I just loved it. I was always always just wanted to be doing that. I mean, I remember when the rest of the family was in front of the TV, I was on the ground just drawing. And the thing that kind of stopped me in my tracks, though, was hearing that, classical realism and kind of like the whole atelier world and learning those old methods was dead, and nobody knew how to do it anymore. And one of the big things that I think, if I could go back and have a second shot at it again, right? I wouldn't believe it, because I did. I didn't look for myself. I believed it and was just like, oh, great. And I wanted to learn those things. And so, I kept on drawing, kept on doing my own thing, but it kind of seemed to me like something that I was either going to have to try to figure out myself, or that was it, or just not do it. And so more and more as I grew up, I kind of got away from it a little bit. And, also I'm from a small town too. So, I was, it's not saying a lot, but like everybody kind of knew me because all I would do is draw. And that's, even if they weren't friends of mine or anything, they just knew, oh, that's the guy that draws all the time, right? And so I kind of didn't really want to, I guess, have that be I'm sorry, I'm trying to think of a way to say this. But basically there was kind of like a little bit of pressure there too. And when I kind of felt like I couldn't really learn those methods, I just started going into other things I was into, like math and sciences, and kind of started to like refocus that way. But it was something I always loved to do, but I did stop doing it there for a long time. And it wasn't until after my time in the Marine Corps, when I was injured and retired, and I just randomly started drawing again, and it just felt great. And I remember talking to my wife, just, man, I haven't done this in years, but like, I love it. I don't even know why I started doing it again. This is exactly what I want to do. And so I went to my first workshop from an artist I'd found on YouTube at that point, because he was going to be in British Columbia, and I'm out in Washington State. So we decided to just make a trip ourselves and go up there. And on the way back home from that trip, I was talking to her, and I was like, I think I really want to study this. So now that I kind of know that these things are out there and there's people that actually do these things, and I wish I'd done it sooner, but it's better late than never, I guess.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, that reminds me a little bit of my own journey with art also, and also with like feminism, because I also, like, when I was younger, I also heard, you hear stuff, whatever it is, anything can be art, anything is art. If you say it is art, it's art, and that's it. And with feminism, just like whatever stereotypical feminist thing you can think of. And it didn't even occur to me to be like, but why?
Yeah,
Or
right. Yeah.
yeah,
Especially
yeah.
as a child,
Yeah. No, I mean, it took me a very long time. It's like I turned 40 this year, and it's like it just occurred to me to kind of indulge in the contrarian that I have inside and be like, no, but why this? Why that? Like ask curiosity questions, And it took a really long time for me for it to even occur to me to do these things. And it's really quite refreshing to indeed find that other viewpoints, other ideas, other methods, other things kind of give those things give one permission in a way, or I feel like they gave me permission in a way to, either adopt a different thing or just ask more questions about something else, or kind of think more about something, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And when you have those conversations too, I mean, I don't know about you, but they're some of the best in my life. I love talking to people that especially have different opinions than I do. Because I find that so fascinating,
Yeah.
to just kind of indulge in like kind of their viewpoints and things, and use, like, not necessarily use that, but it kind of informs my own, for that matter too, and it's a great way to learn,
Oh, for
because
sure.
different perspectives and different viewpoints on things are huge in that regard, and that's kind of, I guess, what we do as artists, right? Is just, it's an exploration always, it's trying to find something that you just can't quite ever really reach, I guess, or it feels that way, just something that's intangible, like this thing in my head. I'm trying to get there. I don't even know how to do that,
Yeah. And the thing of what you're saying about different ideas, I've also been learning actually to not exactly devil's advocate, but kind of, but really more what I've been trying to exercise is kind of arguing in favor and against a same point. Like if I agree with something already, then I try, kind of sometimes will do like the mental exercise of trying to argue against it, or like try to think why somebody wouldn't agree with it, or like seeing both the positive and negative in something, because, like, again, it's like that. At least I don't remember having worked that muscle, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like feels good.
Yeah,
Okay.
it does. Yeah.
So you said that you weren't into painting at some point, but then is that what, I mean, you do that now, no?
Yeah, I just started, so I've only done a few paintings, and I'm also a recent father too. So my daughter's
Oh,
going to be turning 2 years old.
congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
awesome. But yeah, so just kind of been busy, being dad and stuff. But also, being a double amputee, I signed up for a research study with the FDA that's done through Walter Reed, called osseointegration, and so they
Osteointegration?
yeah, osseointegration. So that's where they put metal rods through your bones, and your prosthetics then attach to those,
Oh,
instead
okay.
of superficially around the soft tissue, right?
Yes, I see. That
Yeah,
sounds
and
cool.
so that's pretty extensive. So that's one of the reasons I haven't really gone too far into paint. I've only done like 3 or 4 paintings right now. Like just kind of start. I mean, that class I had mentioned to you about taking with Devin, that was actually like the first painting class I'd taken. And because of this, it's just, it eats up all my time, between that and, being dad and stuff. So I'm still chipping away every now and then, but I mean, this thing back here, I don't think I've touched that in at least a few weeks. So, but yeah, it's relatively new, and it was during Devin's class actually that
Devin
I
Cecil?
was work. Yeah, Devin Cecil Wishing.
Oh,
Yeah,
I talked to him last week.
yeah. So,
Cool.
yeah,
Okay.
I checked it out, by the way. It was a great episode.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, but yeah, so it was during his class, just doing like a squash, literally just a squash painting. I
Okay.
kind of fell in love with it, but I still feel like I'm fighting it a lot. It's still just such a different medium than charcoal or graphite, which is totally what I'm primarily like focused, or have been in the past anyways. so it's, kind of what we were just talking about. It's really fun to kind of dive into something I know literally nothing about, and just, it was so foreign, just even in the way that it moved and you applied it, it's such a big learning curve, but, I love to learn. So it's, it's been great.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's also like exercise for the brain. Like
Absolutely.
learning a new skill, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so all right, so the experience with you know drawing with graphite and charcoal is more extensive than with painting because I mean, how what year did you start? When did you take that first class?
I think it was the like third quarter or fourth quarter of 2018. And
Okay.
yeah, I think it was at the tail end of summer, if I remember correctly. But yeah, we went to Kelowna, British Columbia, and it was like a week-long workshop. And then when I got home, I didn't do anything for like 3 or 4 months. But started like I hit reset and just started doing simple shapes and just wanted to start all over and kind of be really as serious as I could about it.
Yeah,
So
yeah. Well, all right, but I mean that's not so very short either. I thought you were going to say like 2020 or something.
no,
2018.
no.
Yeah, 2018 is
Yeah,
like that's a little good while there. Okay.
yeah, yeah.
Okay, so why did you want to start why did you want to learn to paint to begin with? And with oil, right? Oil paint?
Yeah, yeah. So I've never used acrylic, just oil so far, but I guess it's primarily just an aesthetic reason. I love the old masters works, and especially like 19th century paintings and stuff. And I guess there's maybe like a romanticized version of like oil painting in my brain, maybe
Mm-hmm.
from just loving that stuff from childhood and everything. Um, but yeah, I really just kind of wanted to have that, I guess, be my foundation because I had no idea what I even wanted to do, with this, or if I even wanted to necessarily make a career, if I just want to do it for myself. It was just something that I've always wanted to learn and something that I just love to do. And regardless of whichever way I end up going, I wanted that kind of classical study to be the very root and foundation of
Mm-hmm.
wherever I end up going.
Mm-hmm.
I guess that's really the best answer I got. But yeah, I mean, I'm not necessarily opposed to other mediums or anything. It's just kind of, I just feel like I'm trying to really hone in the fundamentals, really, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, I mean, definitely I mean, what are the really old mediums? I mean, graphite and charcoal for sure, and oil for sure. And
And
I
chalk,
think,
yeah.
and yeah, chalk, um, like gouache and watercolor, and then that's it. I think acrylic is relatively
Yeah.
new, no?
Yeah, I believe so, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, no, it definitely makes sense that you would be interested in oil paint because that's what the masters did, and it's like a really old, like settled way of doing stuff. And it's like, how can one not be impressed by Rembrandt and you know that how I don't know how can I don't see how somebody could look at that stuff and be like, wow, that's amazing, and
I
then
know, right?
immediately be like, if they're using oil, then that means I must be used. That's also what I should do because that's what it makes a lot of sense that one would make that association. And if you want to learn how to do something like that, then one would also want to use the same medium, that the
Yeah,
masters were using.
and I don't necessarily think there's anything wrong with any of the other mediums either. I mean, there's people that, they do work in acrylics, and especially depending on where people go. Like there's this artist I just saw on Instagram not that long ago, just like a reel of him doing, I think it was him. I actually don't even know if it was a man or woman, but they were doing acrylic paintings of like Disney characters that just looked amazing. I was blown away that they were actually paint. And
Mm-hmm.
I found out that they had helped develop the paint. And,
Mm-hmm.
for what they're doing, that's perfect because doing that in oil would probably look really weird,
Yeah.
So I think in that regard too, it kind of just, it's really just where you want to go, right? And
Sure.
and
Yeah.
what you
Yeah.
want to do, and on your individual artistic journey, and yeah, exactly. It's just this is where I kind of wanted to root myself, and whether or not I continue to do it, I can't really say, right? It's just I want to learn it though.
Mm.
I want to be proficient enough to understand it, and I'm sure that'll help go any other way too, you know?
Okay. So would you say that regardless of the medium, you would like to continue to learn to just make art and learn methods to
Basically,
make art? Okay.
yeah. I mean, because it's almost like trying to satisfy that mental image of just, I just want to see this, you
Mm-hmm.
know?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
I
yeah.
guess, you know, it's just, this is in my head and I just got to get it out. You know, what's the best way to do that? You know, is it oil paint? Is it chalk? Is it graphite, charcoal? You know, is it a combination? Right.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
Yeah, that's definitely a big reason for which I draw also to begin with, because I have a mental image of something and I want to see it with my own eyes instead of in my mind's eye, you know, like I want to see it with my
yeah.
eyeballs. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. You know, it's always just this amazing thing in your head, you know?
Yeah,
And it's
yeah,
like, I feel like I'm always falling short of that, you know?
yeah, you know what happens to me that I have like the mental image and I'm like, all right, I'm gonna try to see if I can make it, you know, draw it. And then it like as I develop the drawing, it like kind of it almost starts fading away in my mind. Kind of it starts like slowly fading onto the paper that I'm drawing, and it's not exactly the same because then it starts changing completely. Um,
Yeah, it takes on its
as
own kind of life.
exactly, yeah, it becomes its own thing. But then it's like this whole I don't know, like metamorphosis almost in a way, because you know that metamorphosis, it's like the creature starts as something and then becomes something completely different, and so like it's something like that because it's like it's something in the mind, in the mind's eye, and then it ends up being something completely different. You know, it's really that procedure is really quite interesting.
Yeah, it really is. And in a lot of ways too, even kind of disheartening in some ways, but also that's kind of what makes it great too, is that um because it kind of takes on that own life of its own, or its own kind of metamorphosis, like you were saying, that kind of forces you then to make decisions as an artist of like, okay, well, how, like, what, this is totally different, but I love this, right? Like this aspect, I want to like emphasize that, or whatever, right? And so, and I think that that's what's really great about all of it, you know, is that it is always just exploration and, you know, trying to just solve all these problems constantly. I mean that's the thing that's just so enthralling for me, I think, you know.
Okay. Um. Okay. So, what do you like? What do you like about drawing? Just graphite or charcoal over paper. And what do you like about painting besides, you know, trying to like walk on the same steps of the masters?
It's a good question. Well, about graphite and charcoal, I would say it's probably the simplicity. um it's just a really humble medium.
Mm.
You didn't find it anywhere. I mean, like when I was a child, and my dad was actually, he had a business with artwork that he made, and he primarily kind of really zeroed in on being a calligrapher.
Oh,
And so he did a ton of calligraphy, and made like prayers for churches and stuff like that he would sell to,
that's
and all
awesome.
that kind of stuff. Yeah, so we
Old
always
school.
had all these things. Yeah, right. Yeah,
Yeah.
and we had all these things just around the house because he had printers for printing out making his own prints and shipping them and stuff. And so I would just, you know, regular old Xerox paper and a, you know, number two pencil, and that was
Mm.
it. You know?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it was just readily available, you know, all the time. And so it was just natural to pick up. I remember at one point trying to do like pen and ink, and because I love pen, like, you know, especially like Bernie Wrightson, or you know, just some of those like old like illustrators. Oh man, just some of the pen and ink and stuff, I just love that. But I was never good at it. So I kind of stuck with pencils, and you know, it was more just trying out all these different things. I had a brother. I'm the youngest of 10 too, so
What?
yeah. So yeah,
Nice.
I had a brother that went to the Kansas City Art Institute, and when he
Okay.
came home, you know, he was kind of like giving me his extra oil pastels to play with, and this is all like around the time I was like in kindergarten, I think.
Okay.
And so just trying out different stuff. I actually remember him helping me do a project for school where the only two colors were blue and orange, and
Mm.
that was
Yeah,
so
those
cool
are
to do because
complementary
I'd never
colors.
done
Yeah.
that before.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. And so he kind of showed that to me. This is, you know, third grade maybe.
Okay.
And so it was just fun to just kind of dabble and stuff, but it was always just kind of things that were just like readily available, and we didn't really have like oil paint just lying around the house, right? My dad did a lot of watercolor, so I mean that was there, but yeah, it just, I just like the simplicity, and I also tend to be kind of lazy in the sense that like I can't stand cleaning up.
Oh my God. Hmm.
Yeah, and which is kind of ridiculous when you think about it, because it's really not that bad. It takes like all of like 3-4 minutes,
Yeah.
in some cases, yeah.
It's
But
just a, yeah, okay.
well, even like sculpture, the very limited sculpture I've done too, it's like that's the worst part, because you can't
Mhm,
sweep up any of the clay to make it airborne, right? You have to like keep it all wet, and
mhm.
because it's so bad for your lungs and all that stuff. So, but I mean, that's even woodwork. I mean, I've dabbled in that,
What
my
did you
whole
dabble
life
with?
too.
Sorry.
Woodworking,
Ah, yeah.
yeah, and same thing, ton of cleanup there too. But yeah, it's
Yeah.
just like, yeah, pencils were just so fast and not necessarily easy, but like readily available and just simple. There
Mhm.
wasn't much more to that. And then I even remember when I discovered that there was different grades of pencils, and that just shattered my entire universe.
Yeah, yeah.
Because I'd been using just like Dixon Ticonderoga forever. But
Okay. Yeah, the thing about cleaning up is funny because that's probably half the reason at least for which I don't paint. Because
yeah,
it's like it for me personally, because it's like it takes so long to get ready, first of all. And then it takes so long to be done. It's like, yeah, I mean, you're right that it's 3-4 minutes if you like do it immediately after you're done, sure. But then I'm like, I have to
I
clean these
know.
brushes, god damn it to hell. And it's like, oh my god, each one, and like my handle gets sore because I'm like the soap and the whatever, and I'm like, I hate
Yeah,
everything. I want to punch everyone. This is terrible. And it's like, I don't know. It's like it's
I
so
get
ridiculous.
it.
Yeah, yeah. It's
I
so
totally get it.
ridiculous. It's so ridiculous. But and on the other hand, the it's like it's a huge argument in favor of drawing, with graphite, or just whatever handheld device, a pen also. I made a video a little while ago about digital media versus analog media and like AI generated art. And there's this argument in favor of AI generated art, which is cool. I mean, I don't have anything against it. Um, that says something about the democratization of art, and it's like, okay, that's cool, but have you heard of pencil and paper though? it's
Yeah.
like it's like it's like that. It's like, what is more democratic than that? It's like both of those objects are practically free, and it's so like if versus an AI generator. It's like you have to have a smart device, you have to have an internet connection, sometimes you have to pay for the thing. Your computer has to be advanced enough that it can handle the graphic manipulation or whatever it does, you know?
No, no kidding. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like I mean, of course the making art be able to reach as many people as possible, of course it's good. Of course that's good. Except that I just think the argument is flawed in the sense that a piece of paper and a pencil is way more accessible.
Oh
It's
yeah,
way
and
more
anywhere.
accessible,
Yeah, you can find it anywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, like even at its most base form, like charcoal. I mean, sure, it's not as simple as I'm about to make it sound, but you got wood, you got fire, you got charcoal.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, because
And
that's
it's
basically
way more
it.
of a process than that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
but still, though, so
Yeah, yeah. Okay. All right. So tell me then a little bit, I guess, about now that you've been painting for a little while, even if it's been maybe on and off, either way, like the experience that you've amassed doing that, what do you enjoy about it? And how does it feel versus drawing?
oh man, that's a tough one. Well, definitely the thing that I love about it is the fact that it's in full color, because
Mm-hmm.
color in itself, just color theory in general, I mean, that, we could spend all day talking about that easily. And that's just fascinating to me, just kind of exploring all of that and how colors work. Because I remember initially starting, it was like, you mix this, right? Or it's like, I don't know. It felt like if I mixed red and I mixed white, I would get orange. I'm like, how did I get orange? It doesn't make any
Yeah,
sense,
yeah.
and so at least that's what it felt like, right? And so it was really difficult, but that was also kind of what I loved about it too, was that it was really challenging. It was very, very difficult to kind of get started even. And that's kind of where, Devin's class actually really helped, because one of the big focuses he had was just, breaking it down simple, right? It's either hue, value, or chroma. There's
Mm,
only maximum of three things you got to figure out, really.
mm,
And taking it one step at a time like that really does help a lot. And but the more I started to do it, it was just you get into this kind of groove or flow state like you would with anything else, right? And I love like the buttery smooth texture of it, and just the way that it can kind of flow into itself. So like almost effortlessly. And you're kind of just like almost trying to stay out of the way, it feels like sometimes of the medium itself, and not try to like overdo it. Right. Um, but, uh, but yeah, it's just so different. I think that's really what I love about it the most is that, it's full color and just so it's like a whole Pandora's box of like new problems to solve, right? Especially too, because when you have kind of like a blank canvas or one that you've just kind of toned or did a wipeout or whatever, a Bosch, the when you're first putting down your opaque layers, you look at it and you're like, there's no way that's the right color. Not a chance.
Yeah.
It looks completely different, right? And it's so hard to like just ignore that voice and just continue through because like it's more important to get the full context, and get everything kind of working together and pushing and pulling it all around. And so yeah, it's so different in that regard that I think that's what I love the most about it. And I think I forgot the second half of that question.
I was wondering how it compares for you, how it compares with drawing for you, because and I get the impression that it's kind of like a compliment, maybe for now, because it's like drawing is very straightforward in its application. You just take your pencil and paper and you draw, and then with painting, there's all these other considerations and kind of almost like looking a little more into the future, because it's like when you put your ground down, for example, like you were saying, like this ground color, it's like what does it have to do with the top layer, So it's like long-term thinking kind of, does that seem right?
Yeah, absolutely. I would absolutely agree with that because yeah, you're kind of keeping in mind where you're going with it and trying not to get bogged down because that can happen really easily. I feel like with drawing, especially, like everybody wants to just focus in on detail, right away.
Yeah.
And I have to fight that all the time because I love to render texture. Like for me, I don't know what it is. I want this tactile experience. I want to feel like I can touch it. That's kind of what like I'm trying to do a lot of times. And I'm probably just over modeling the heck out of everything, but I love that part. That's like the weeds that I love to get into, that and like form. And so with painting, it's kind of, you really have to restrain that a lot because without the full context, I mean, and maybe that's just because I'm so new at it, but without that full context, it's near impossible to kind of make decisions like that, and nor do you really need to at those early stages, right? But yeah, like it's so much more different, and it's not just line and tone and things like that, right? It's like you have a line. Well, that line could be any number of colors, right? What's the best one? Like, like what's the best way to accentuate this part or like show this depth with just this one thing? I mean, because that's one of the things I love about, looking at other people's art is how they describe, it's that language of art, right? Like how do they communicate what they're trying to communicate, through all those properties that you're working with your composition, your value, your hue, your lines, your tone, all that stuff. It's so much to try to figure out. And I can totally see why the atelier world does that whole, drawing year leading into painting year as like a fundamental foundation before going in there, because man, I couldn't imagine just trying to pick up painting on my own.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely, I can see that it would be really overwhelming. Like I totally felt that way about studying anatomy before I went to school. Because I was like, wow, I love this stuff, and I had like they're like anatomy plates that I bought at a store, and I was like, wow, these are cool. And I would like draw the images from the plates, but then I wouldn't read the labeling and stuff because I was like, I don't know, whatever, I don't know. It was just confusing and overwhelming and weird. But then I went to school to the New York Academy, and then like there, the teacher, the teachers that I took class with kind of guided me into the study with, their experience, what they know. And I was like, oh, that's how, okay. So like, that's much more helpful. So then like, after that, like now, if I want to further study something else, it's like, I have that some degree of baseline there to kind of forge my own path in studying something, like shooting off from what I learned with them.
Yeah, yeah,
You know?
that like foundation, that
Yeah,
solid, fundamental you can return to, right?
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
and I honestly felt the same way studying anatomy too, because back in this would have been like 2019, so
Mhm.
really early in, I started trying to figure out, study anatomy, picked up a few books and everything, and I just remember I think I did like two or three drawings, and I was just like, I do this is too hard. And, my wife had this. She always called Mondays meltdown Mondays, right? Because it's just like, oh my god, I can't do this. It's so hard. And but that's where like those online classes, especially once COVID hit and everything just kind of went online, it became a lot more available to me.
Mhm.
Because early in 2019, I went to Grand Central Atelier's drawing boot camp. Learned a ton there. That was fantastic. Just being in that environment was just great. Because
Mhm.
I've never been to any uh, like official core program, right?
Mhm.
It's just been a series of workshops and kind of my own time, really. And uh, yeah, when I went and did that, it was just kind of seeing into that world was just such a pleasure, to just see artists, just they. It was like they were just right here the whole time. Just nope,
Mhm.
I'm on a mission, and
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
like it was great. It was so cool to be around, and learned a ton, and so many talented artists there that it was just like this whole world to now like kind of explore and it was through their classes that I started to really get a handle on the anatomy because yeah it was almost like I was overthinking it
Yeah,
it
yeah.
really didn't need to be that difficult
Yeah,
right
yeah.
it was just trying to yeah it was just like objectively just looking at this okay where does that attach where does it insert where's the main belly and what
Mhm.
is the shape that it takes across its whole path and then it's just repetition more and more
Yeah,
and more
the
and more and more
practice.
right yeah um and that's something I just actively study as much as I can still because my favorite thing I think is figurative works I
Mhm.
love to work on the figure and so I really wanted to zero in on that and I've kind of been doing a lot of anatomy for the last like 3 4 years
Nice.
so
Okay. Okay. Mr. Franklin, what is art in your opinion?
oh man I've been dreading that one so, uh Um, I think the best way I could possibly put it would be it's some kind of communication between two or more people, whether that be culturally, emotionally, figuratively, even. It's I guess communicating over our own humanity. I guess is probably the best way I could really describe that.
Mhm.
In my opinion, anyways. I mean, because when it comes to like talking about art, I feel like we kind of need to like define art.
Yeah.
Like what do we mean by that, right? Are we
Yeah.
talking fine art? Are we talking visually pleasing, right? Are we talking decorative, right? Um, or just done with a high degree of skill and craftsmanship? Like
Mhm.
what exactly are we, focusing on? And I think yeah, like what I was saying for me, if I was to define art, I would say what classifies something as an art versus a craft or something that is not intended to, well, not necessarily intended, but something that's purely for decoration, right? Is really the intent behind it. And I
Behind
think that
art?
that kind of, yeah, and I think
Okay.
that kind of originates with the person doing it. Like one of the ways I like to indulge in thinking about it is like a woodworker, if they're making this beautiful table,
Mhm.
right? It's a table, it's beautiful, right? Like they put all this craftsmanship into it. But I would be really curious to know, if you were to speak to that person that made it and just say, wow, this is a work of art, if they would be like, dude, it's just a table, you
Yeah.
know? And so I think that I mean even though they're a master at what they do if the intent is not there for that kind of connection over humanity then I think that's really kind of what determines whether it's art or not but it's
Mhm.
such an abstract idea it's really hard to kind of zero in on,
What do you mean with the humanity part that you were talking about? To communicate about humanity? I don't remember exactly how you worded it.
I think I said what it means to be human, or well, what I meant was what it means to be human,
I
right?
see.
Like, um, like holding your child for the first time,
Mm-hmm.
or even earlier today, my wife was at an appointment, so my daughter just fell asleep on me, and God, this favorite
Oh,
thing in the world, just laying on the
yeah.
couch, right? And it's like, how do you express what that's like, right? I mean,
Yeah.
that's such a difficult thing to try to explain with words or pictures or anything, really. Um, Sounds, even like you can talk about like music and things that sound really gentle, and it would be probably a lot better at describing that than say like Pantera or something, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's more that it's kind of a connection between the originator and the creator and whoever that ends up connecting with on a level that can only be understood as intrinsically human, right? And like our shared experience, because throughout centuries and of human existence, I feel like there's so many things that are just innately human.
Mm-hmm.
Like this, what's it all about, and all this like um I forget the term, but what's it all for? Like what are we here for? What's the point of it all, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
kind of like existential crises, or like all those things have been happening for centuries, and I feel like everybody's trying to answer that question or trying to figure that out. And I think art is just one of those ways in which we kind of share that, yeah, I can figure it out either.
Yeah.
And I think having that connection with somebody, even from centuries past, just seeing that, like, it can just totally floor you, as
Mm-hmm.
far as like you feel one and the same with them or connected with them in some capacity, even if you've never been on this plane of existence with them at any point ever,
Yeah.
and I think that's kind of really the meat and potatoes behind it, essentially,
Yeah.
is that kind of connection and that shared humanity,
Mm-hmm.
really.
Okay. Yeah, I like that aspect about that you brought up about it a lot, because it is indeed not an activity that is exclusive to humans necessarily, because I don't know if you know, but there's like a handful of animals out there that do things for the purpose of mating that are really aesthetically mind-blowing. I don't know if you know, but it's really cool. It's like there's this fish, I think it's a blowfish, that makes like a relief on the sand to attract a mate, for example.
Oh wow, yeah.
And it's like it's like, and it kind of overlaps a little bit with the what you were talking about, the craftsmanship of a person making a table. Because the yeah, I think woodworking is a really good example, because, for example, I can think, I'm not that familiar with woodworking, but I can think of several things where a person, because of a person's attention to detail, there's things like having the corners match perfectly, for example, not having like any hairs of wood coming out, and like sanding that down, and like having the varnish be very even, and like everything being smooth, and that attention to detail is also applicable to when we draw or paint. And it's like, I think it's recognizable. I think, you will probably be able to recognize a drawing or a painting where that kind of attention to detail was applied. And I mean, I for sure can definitely, it's like, I relate it to caring about you care, you put intention, you care about the
Oh,
thing.
totally.
So
Yeah.
you make it precious and delicate, and it's the marks are deliberate. It looks deliberate when it's finished. It doesn't look like haphazard or improvised. Um, and it's it so your muse about the human condition makes sense, I mean, I guess still with what I'm talking about, because it's like being able to recognize the intention of a person in the work they made. It's like that's, it takes another human to be able to recognize it. It takes another human that did it to be able to recognize it. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
What do
absolutely.
you, what
Yeah,
do you think about that? Yeah.
yeah, I completely agree. It's kind of, so to put it into, I mean, this is totally different than art. But it's like, me being injured, right, in
Mm.
combat. Um, I have that kind of understanding with other people that have been through the same thing, but I can never explain it to somebody.
Mm.
Just like, a man is never going to be able to understand what it's like to give birth, you know,
Yeah.
um, never, like, never, but
Yeah, it's
other women
physically
can.
impossible.
Yeah, yeah, but other women can for sure,
Sure.
like, and some people can even bond over that,
Mm.
like shared trauma, those are really powerful things. Those are incredibly powerful, and there's so many things, and that's just kind of like a side thing, but like a side example. But when in terms of art, it's having that, sensing that intention, like you were saying, like having it speak to you. I guess would be how some other people would maybe describe it. Um, is so powerful, because a lot of times, like we all just kind of feel alone, especially
Sure.
in this kind of crazy world and how things like develop and change and grow, and you have to adapt to all of it, and you just feel lost, a lot of the time. And I was talking to a friend of mine a little while ago who's expecting a child of his own, and he was telling me how scared he was, and I was like, yeah, man, no one's ever going to prepare you for the love or the fear,
Yeah, yeah.
ever. And um, it's those things that you just have to experience, and that's why not every piece of work I feel like is going to resonate with every single person,
Mm.
because maybe they didn't have experiences or ways in which they can connect with it, whereas in others they can,
Mm.
you know. And yeah, that attention to detail and like doing things in a beautiful way, or an aesthetically pleasing way, or just like seeing that they put in that much work, because I'm sure it's the same for all of us when we're doing it. It's just when we're in the weeds and doing all that and being so obsessive about what we're trying to do. Is it really for anybody else? I mean, for me, no.
Mm.
Like, I don't care if anybody ever sees it. That's not the point. The point is just, I don't know. If I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it this as best I can,
Mm.
and pour all of that into it. It's almost like you got to sacrifice part of yourself,
Mm.
to have it become a piece of art, I guess, or something. Um, but yeah, I think that is very fundamentally important to what art actually is.
Yeah, at the same time, as I listened to you elaborate on that, I think it could also, or as a possibility, it could also work to try to explain to someone maybe what something feels like even if they haven't experienced it. And I mean, some things like you were saying about giving birth and certain other things, it's physically impossible unless you feel it in your body yourself.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like I still think it's interesting for both the person trying to explain it and the person that's listening trying to understand, or watch if it's a drawing or whatever, that the information is being conveyed through which the information is being conveyed. um for both of them to try to, for both parties involved to like try to engage in that mental exercise of trying to put something into words that you cannot in a way, and then the other person trying to understand and imagine in their mind what it would be like, even though physically they might never experience it within their body. It's like, because that is also a way to connect with other individuals, because it's like, obviously sharing, being able to, I mean, having experienced some kind of physical thing the same as another person or similarly to another person obviously is a way to communicate. But then another way to communicate is to try to understand or try to imagine what it will be like, you know?
Yeah, trying to empathize.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, especially when the one empathizing hasn't gone through it themselves,
Right.
and even amongst people that have had the same experience, there's still going to be vast differences,
Sure. Yeah, yeah.
because every single one's different, every single experience is different, right? And they may have kind of commonalities in in theme or purpose or what happened or, you know, whatever, right?
Circumstance.
But it's two things are never gonna ever going to be the same.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
that's kind of what's beautiful about it, because something is always kind of lost in translation. I think the same thing kind of happens with art too, you know, is that no one's going to get all of it, or no one's going to be able to pick up on everything an artist was necessarily trying to communicate. Or and I don't even necessarily think that, I mean, I do believe that a lot of artists do try to communicate like deliberately, but I think a lot of stuff just kind of happens naturally based on what is in the artist's mind at the time of making it.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, because if that artist is kind of musing over a past experience that kind of inspired a painting or something like that, right? I really think that those things are kind of going to show through in some capacity, even if nobody else really picks up on it, you know, because it's just in the forefront of their mind the whole time. You know, it's the same thing with when you're trying to turn form or trying to get your light effect right, or whatever, right? If you deliberately focus on those things, I think they within reason, anyways, tend to kind of grow from that, you know, and people can see it just at a glance that, oh, this person, they were focusing on that. You can tell, you know, and like, I mean, light effect and like Rembrandt, you know, like just look at any of his, you know, portraits, and the God, it just looks like there's someone right in front of you, man. It's amazing, you know. And it like, I don't know if that was, I believe it was just him focusing on what he was trying to capture, you know, and it just shows through, you know. And I also find it funny too, because I think in some ways that there's many things that an artist was trying to convey but failed, you know?
Yeah.
And that, you know, it's like that's how we learn, so nobody picks up on it, but they made something else like really beautiful, like
Yeah.
that they weren't, you know. And so it's just kind of like happy accidents, you know. But
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, okay, yeah. Yeah, Rembrandt and, you know, I mean, what several other people have a quality to the way that they portrayed portraits that I often, when I look at them, the paintings, I often feel like I would probably recognize that person if I saw them.
oh yeah,
Sometimes, yeah. I really like it when I see that in a portrait because obvious, I mean, and I don't know, to me it seems like it's a really big mark of not just the artist's style, but they obviously know what they're doing.
yeah,
You
yeah.
know?
Or like a John Singer Sargent. I mean, you get up close
Yes.
to some of like the drapery and fabrics, and it's just, it looks so effortless. It looks like he was just throwing paint on there, and it's like, how
Yeah.
did you do that? That is just, it's mind boggling. You know, it's
Yeah,
just,
yeah.
man, this guy was a master. You know, it's amazing.
Yeah, Sargent was kind of ridiculous. He was also ridiculously productive as well, which is, and also he started very young, I think, and he worked really, really. Yeah, it's just some of those guys back then. Also, I was a while ago I was reading about the pre-Raphaelite Brotherhood, and the founder guy William Holman Hunt, that guy busted his ass. Like he was always drawing, he was always painting, and John Everett Millay also, who was another pre-Raphaelite, he was kind of prodigious. He started younger. Um, anyway, all right, we're digressing a little bit, gushing over these people. Okay,
It's
Mr.
easy to
Frank.
do.
Yeah, it is. Mr. Franklin, what is beauty in your opinion?
So that I think kind of ties perfectly in with what we were kind of just discussing about like shared experiences, is that yeah, it's essentially, I think, just an experience. Yeah, it's something that you can't, it's hard to put into words, right? What it really is, especially because it's so subjective for every person, right? So many people will view different things as beautiful, and others won't, you know. And then there's some things that just people just seem to universally agree is beautiful, like sunsets, right? Or, you know, things from nature, or like those photos of like nebula from Hubble or James Webb, are just, man, I love those. It's just so beautiful to look at. And but I think it's just yeah, I guess an experience that one would have to experience or go through to really understand, you know. And I think trying to put that into words, or put that into a piece of visual art, or even a piece of music, I mean, that's what it's all about, I think, you know, is just, it's this intangible thing. It's that thing in your head that you're trying to get out and make something tangible out of it, that others can experience and connect with, and sometimes it's not even like the aesthetic beauty. I feel like, sometimes it's just what it means,
Mm-hmm.
or the feeling it invokes,
Mm-hmm.
just like a still life that has this kind of somber lighting, or it can make you just, it feels sad,
Mm-hmm.
the same way instrumental music can do the exact same thing, um so yeah, I think it's just an innate experience that we all encounter at some point, I guess.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
feel like that's a terrible way of explaining it, but
No, no, no. I
so,
don't.
and
No, I
like,
don't think so at all.
well,
That's
so,
all right.
sometimes too, yeah, sorry, I feel like the English language just needs more words. We don't have enough,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
to explain it. You know what I mean? It's almost frustrating because you're just like, oh, it's beautiful. It's like, oh, that doesn't do it justice.
Yeah, 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 yeah. No, I think, I think, I mean, well, all languages, I think, have the capacity. It's just that, at least in my case, I don't think I know enough words necessarily. Like, I love the thesaurus, for example. On the internet, you just go to thesaurus.com and then you put a word in, and then
Oh
it's like
yeah,
at least 10 synonyms, and it's like, wow, that's awesome. Because
yeah,
that speaks to the versatility of the language, because like not all the words feel the same, even if they have a similar meaning. But okay.
yeah.
So okay, I agree with you about especially about the universal things that are very likely universally thought of as beautiful, like this, you said, the sunset, and things about nature. And so in your case, probably something, I mean, that is also probably to universal and exclusive to the human experience of, like, your offspring having had your baby fall asleep on you, and that just being unbearably adorable. um so like, you probably consider all of these things like that experience of beauty. So then what would you say it feels like for you?
You mean beauty in general,
Yeah.
or okay?
Yeah, just
Um,
like if you're experiencing those things that are like what you were saying, like looking at a sunset, you can't stop looking, and it just feels special and meaningful somehow, and you're having your kid, like this kind of stuff.
I guess I would say that it's something that like just totally overwhelms you.
Mm-hmm.
Like every sense available to your physical body, is just totally overwhelmed with this experience where you just lose yourself in it,
Mm-hmm.
right? I mean, it's kind of like I feel like film does a really good way of kind of showing some of these things, because unlike literature where you have words, and to your point, you can do pretty much anything with words, and even art, right? Visual art, you have a visual language that
Mm-hmm.
you're essentially just using to communicate certain things, like show depth and whatever you're trying to communicate. And then you have like something like film that kind of has a lot of those things. You have words as well as picture, as
Mm-hmm.
well as kind of a chronological series of things, happening. Like where for a painting, you can't do that necessarily, right? Um, and but you get those scenes in a movie where somebody is like looking up at sun shining through the trees, and then like all the sound starts to get louder, and like it's kind of like that. It's you start to just lose yourself in it, and kind of like synchronize with it in some way, and it's almost like a force, I guess, that just uh transcends everything,
Mm-hmm.
like time or gravity, or things like that just like transcend human understanding. And I feel like that's kind of what this is, is like, for me, experiencing it, that's what it feels like, just getting completely overwhelmed, and the best way I could describe it is just feeling so alive at
Mm-hmm.
that moment,
Mm-hmm.
you know um and then it's always fleeting, it always just, it's gone as fast as it came, um and I think that's the thing that we all neurotically like cling to,
Mm-hmm.
for for what we do, right? So I guess that's the best way I could really describe that. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, the part about it being overwhelming, both overwhelming and fleeting, that makes a lot of sense. It seems right, because it's like, indeed, when one is in the middle of that contemplation, where, at least in my case, if it's like looking at a tree or a flower or whatever, it's like you you know I obviously have to stop whatever I'm doing, because it's like, if I'm going for a walk, or if I'm doing whatever it is that I'm doing, if I'm in the middle of carrying my groceries, for example, it's like I have to stop doing what I'm doing. I have to, like, the process of doing groceries has to stop. I have to put the groceries down. I have to stop thinking about what I'm going to do when I get home or whatever. And I have to stop and look at the flower or the tree or whatever it is. And then that becomes its own activity for a while. So it's like, I'm like enjoying and contemplating and thinking about that. And like what you were saying which is what I think of when you were talking about the transcending, because it's like, seeing trees and the sky and stuff, at least in my case, reminds me that I'm on Earth and that we're in a universe and all of this stuff. And it's like, oh, somehow here there's life, and this is the form life took, in the form of me, in the form of this flower, in the form of this plant, in the form of this little bug or whatever. And so like that moment, that kind of experience, I think, has to be fleeting, because then you wouldn't do anything else.
Oh yeah. You would die there. Yeah.
Yeah, you would definitely die, because it's like, it's sometimes thinking about that stuff, like dealing with it, is a lot,
Yeah,
it's very
absolutely.
moving and meaningful.
Yeah, and I mean, it can overwhelm people to tears. I mean,
For sure.
I was at a concert with a buddy of mine that just like a long time ago, and there was one of the opening bands. I mean, dude was bawling his eyes out. He was just like, that was beautiful. He was like, it totally moved him. He was just
Yeah.
loving it, and it's so cool. Like it's such an amazing thing. Like I said, it's proof that you're alive.
Yes.
Like, and that's exactly the human condition thing that I was trying to emphasize, is that how do you describe that? How can you ever describe that, or show that, for that matter, right? It's something you have to experience, and what we artists are trying to do is communicate those experiences, and not always beauty too, that
Right.
like, that's not, those things aren't like exclusive, right? It's anything could really be beautiful depending on the viewpoint, I guess. And yeah, it's just, that's that intangible thing that we're always like reaching for and never quite getting. It all just comes from nature. It's all just like life. It's literally the definition of life, and that's just so inherently beautiful in and of itself. Right? And yeah, it's wild. And it's funny too, because like, even going back to like how I was saying, define art, right? You can do the same thing with beauty. You can do things that like, there's so many, like that table, the woodworking table, that can be absolutely gorgeous, right? They can just be totally beautiful. Even though, as we kind of discussed, like, maybe it's not art, it's hard to say. I mean, you could, I guess, theoretically, like, explain anything to be art.
Sure.
But like we kind of talked about, I think the intent there is, and that kind of human condition really is what solidifies it, though. As well as, same thing with like mastery of technique and all those things, right? But yeah, it's, there are some things that are just meant to be aesthetically pleasing, and that can be beautiful too, right? And that's not necessarily akin to a sunset or losing yourself in a moment, right? It can just be something that's like, oh, that looks nice, that's beautiful, and like it has such a wide range of what it could be. That's why I was saying, we need more words, really, like, because it's so hard to discuss or try to even explain or show or anything. I mean, that's exactly what the arts exist for.
Okay. All right. Well, Mr. Franklin, we have passed the 55-minute mark of our conversation, so I'm going to start to close the episode out. And also, I like what you were saying just now as the closing thoughts. Is there anything you'd like to add? Is there any project you have coming up or anything? Where can your work be found? Anything else? Anything additional? Just a.
No, I don't think so. I only display my work on Instagram. It's Milan.Franklin. And yeah, you can see me on there. I'm just kind of toiling away and studying and learning as much as I can whenever I have time. So always got something going. Whether or not I work it on is another story. But yeah, you can check me out on Instagram.
Okay. All right. Well, the link to that will be in the caption. All right. So thank you everyone for watching and listening. Special thanks to my guest, Milan Franklin, for agreeing to talk to me and thank you, Milan, for your time. If you'd like to support
Thank
Milan,
you.
my podcast, myself, or all three, all corresponding links will be in the caption. Make sure you like this video and leave a comment so we know that you saw this episode. And also remember to subscribe to my audiovisual channel. So everyone, thank you very much for your time and see you next time. Bye.